Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Taylor here at Casone's RV in Mesa, Arizona. Today, I'm going to cover a topic which a lot of people ask me about, and that's basically what's kind of happened to the RV market here in the last 2 or 3 years since we have had the pandemic and how that has affected things, and basically how everything else is going with the market right now, being that I am an RV salesman and I see RVs every single day, talk about RVs with other people every single day. I should know something a little bit about it, how it affects maybe you at home, and I'm going to try to cover a couple of things here that kind of people always bring up. So basically, from the beginning, what really happened was is that people couldn't go out and do things. They couldn't go out, go to the store, go out to eat, go out and entertain, go out to entertainment, go out and pretty much do much of anything. And so, what can you do? Well, you can actually. What's the best case scenario? The best case scenario is get an RV with your family, which you're already around, and then you can go out and go to a secluded area, go camping. And so I think that's why a lot of RVs started selling during that time. Not only on top of that, but people had, either lost their jobs or gotten laid off or were not working for just a certain period of time because their work didn't want them in there, or they could work remotely. So a lot of people took this time to go camping, and they purchased either their first RV or another RV. Most people, their first RV. I think really what happened was is that we had a lot of new time RV buyers come into the market, and really, what I think was the hottest items were a lot of the smaller RVs, the Class C's during that time, and the Class B's, the smaller vans, were some of the just hottest items. I mean, you couldn't keep them if you had anything. It pretty much would sell at that time in decent shape because they were, of course, more convenient. They weren't as intimidating for a first time RV buyer. Those Class C's are generally what rental RV companies will use to rent out, being that they are just the best option. They're still an RV and all in one. They sleep a lot more for people that have guests or kids for true camping. They're not A's, they're not a giant handful as far as size and figuring out everything and getting into parks and places. Also, maybe a lot of the smaller travel trailers as well. Some of the pull behinds that could be pulled that are under 5,000 pounds were really hot items. But what people don't realize too is that a lot of the other stuff, although, you know, and currently what is happening is people think that the market is high, and the market definitely has changed as far as the price and values of things, but not as some may think. I would say that there's more specifically certain RVs and again, like the Class C's and B's that are more on the higher side versus a lot of the other RVs may not have been affected as much. And there's still, some good stuff out there. I would say a lot of times, actually, the older diesels as well are pretty hot commodities as well that a lot of people are wanting to buy up. I would say when it doesn't come to the topic of the Class C's and B's that were very popular at that time. Um, so on top of that, when things started selling, there was kind of course, hype behind that. So people started buying RVs, and once the word gets out, and more people start buying RVs, more and more people start talking about RVs. And basically, that just pushes more and more of the market to sell. It's kind of like the car world, where scarcity may not seem that bad, but as soon as people start talking about it and bringing it up, and it gets popped up on social media everywhere, that more and more people just buy stuff, buy vehicles, buy RVs because they don't want to be like left out and think that there's not going to be any left. Well, I'm here to tell you that that is definitely not going to be the case. There's going to be RVs from here until the end of time that you're going to be able to purchase at any rate, even if you can't buy a brand new one or you have to wait for brand new ones. I mean, there's definitely options for you from any degree. And then what at least what we try to do here. I mean, other dealerships may overcharge you. I message a lot of people every single week, hundreds and hundreds of people. That's my job, is to find RVs that are good values for people that people can purchase and have a good time with. But it has even gotten harder on my end trying to find those RVs that are still a good price, because people, because of the hype, think that their RV, even though it's increased by maybe $1,000 for once ever, or $2,000, or maybe even $4,000, they think that their RV has increased by $20,000, $25,000, $50,000, and it hasn't. And so you have to let these people know that that's really not. And they're saying, no, you know how the market is. Things are selling. They're selling off the shelves. Like, they might be selling, things might be selling a lot, and they are, but they're not selling for $50,000 more than they're worth. And the sad part is that once in a while, that actually does happen. And people, because in their brains they think, oh, things are just so high, they'll end up buying something that's worth $20,000 or $30,000 over what it's really worth. And that happens a lot for the first-time RV buyers. It's not like cars where you have a lot to compare to. I mean, RVs, you do have stuff to compare to, but when you have been owning cars your whole life and you have all these other cars to compare to that are the same exact vehicle, it's a lot easier to get taken advantage of in the RV world and not knowing what you're purchasing. I mean, just a difference of a model number could be the difference of $20,000 having an all-wheel drive, or just, four slides or different features of an RV can totally change the value of an RV. And something good for the viewers watching is that we, the dealers, have NADA, true NADA values, which is really what the true values of everything should be, because that's based off of what the average of what that item is selling across the United States. So what you guys can do watching is there's something called NADA Guides Connect. And that is basically the people's NADA. It's not going to be exact to NADA, but that you can book out basically vehicles, as far as RVs, cars, even boats, I believe, on there, and other vehicles as well, which is going to give you a value to what something really should be priced at, as opposed to, either taking somebody's word for it or being a first-time RV owner and not knowing when something should be worth this and then something else should be worth a different price. So I think what has happened is that there are some people, not just some, but quite a lot of people that, especially when buying private, I would even say private or from a dealership that takes advantage of people, is that they spent way too much. And RVs are not cheap vehicles to begin with. So now people are stuck with RVs that were originally supposed to be one price, and they're, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 more. They paid more than what it's actually worth. And when things come back, they're going to have a lot of trouble having to sell that. I think at this point in time is really when things are starting to pop up here, where people are starting to, that fluctuation of purchases is starting to come back, and people are kind of, that overpaid, are starting to realize that they overpaid, and that, people, the buying market, although people are actually still buying a lot, there's more coming up. So values of the RVs are not necessarily coming down, because all RV values are supposed to always come down, because RVs just come down in value almost always. But they're starting to get back to where they were normally, and some people overpaid. Another thing that's happened is that in the market, that everything is high: vehicles, houses, homes, and renting is high. Here in Arizona, it's high pretty much everywhere. So what people are kind of doing the math on and figuring out is that Well, I can buy a $60,000 or $70,000 RV on a 12-year monthly term and have a payment of $800, and then another $400 or $500 site fee, or even $500 or $600, $700 monthly site fee, or wherever you're parking it at, be hooked up and basically have a home on wheels that is half the price of the rent of where you're renting from, which is true, partially. But again, going back to that is when you do want to go back to renting or owning a home, then you still have that RV and you still have that payment. Now, of course, again, you can go and sell that and move on, but if people overpaid for that RV at the time, then that's going to be a struggle, and then you're going to be stuck with that payment on top of a home payment. Also, what people don't realize is that RVs have, maintenance and insurance and other things that can add to that cost, and also people who are first-time RVers don't realize the amount of things that they have to like fix and work on and keep regular maintenance on a year on an RV that they have parked up and plugged in, or even using and driving around, as opposed to being in an apartment or a condo or even a home. You probably have, in a small home, you probably have the time less things that come up than you would in a 30 or 35-foot RV, depending, of course, on the RV. So basically, I'm probably going to do another video about vehicles as well, about cars separately and vehicles separately. But the issue here being that, when people got stimulus money, or money that they just had extra money, or at the time they were working, they purchased an RV. If they purchased an RV, that's overvalue. They purchased a vehicle also, that's overvalue. When the market comes back down, or when it comes back to normal, or kind of it fixes itself to some degree, that people are going to be very stuck with something that they may have overpaid for, and then they have these payments that they are stuck with. And I can tell you firsthand that a lot of people think that I can tell you that selling a car is much easier than selling an RV. And a lot of people think that, I have an RV, but if you purchase an RV for $100,000 or $60,000 or $70,000 or $80,000 or $150,000, especially in a situation where the market comes down, it's not an easy thing to sell an RV. A lot of people want to finance an RV. They have a trade-in that they want to trade something in to have an RV. That's why dealerships have a pretty good advantage in that sense. But when people that have purchased their RVs at this time, realize that they have to go and sell them, are probably going to find another thing too, that selling RVs is not as easy as it appears. All right, and the last thing is basically gas and fuel prices. Obviously, that has definitely probably been the most brought up question as of lately. I can say as of lately, it's pretty much a general rule of thumb that obviously that fuel prices have affected sales to some degree, whether that be with vehicles or RVs. But actually, I can say that RVs, actually, it hasn't affected it too much yet. I'm sure if it keeps going the rate it is, and it does go up more, that it will affect it definitely more to some degree. But I will say that as opposed to like cars and vehicles, RVs, 90% of the time or 95% of the time, RVs are actually parked. And that's why actually insurance isn't that as expensive, or about the same expense of a vehicle or a car, is because a lot of times the insurance companies know that even though RVs are expensive to fix, that if they're parked most of the time, that there's going to be less accidents, whereas a vehicle you're driving every single day using probably more fuel. But as far as the sales go with that, sales here and probably other dealerships go. Actually, the last month has been very busy as far as the sales. I haven't actually seen a hiccup as far as the sales are concerned. Maybe a little bit slowing down in that department, but what I have seen picking up is people bringing in their RVs, people trading in their RVs, people selling their RVs this last couple of weeks here, and I think that's increased a lot. And I think in that sense that a lot of people, hopefully not everyone, it totally just it depends on the situation, but I would say a lot of people. I mean, being in the RV industry, even beforehand, even before this, you run into a lot of people where there would be in over their head as far as money into their RV. A lot of situations they're not, but I would say that 70% of the time, people a lot of times will owe money, more money than their RV is, or even 50% of the time, more money than their RV is worth, and have to write a check to pay off the difference of what their RV is, or trade up to another RV to put that equity into a new RV. But I can tell you, in a situation like we've had and people overpaying for RVs, that is going to be in a lot worse situation than it has ever been. And we'll see what happens, of course, again with the market. But I think as things correct themselves, and I don't think they're going to necessarily fall off completely. A lot of people still are purchasing RVs, and they are living in them, and sales are still going. I just think that because those people at that time, especially first-time RV buyers, are starting to get rid of their RV that they purchased during that time. All right, guys. Well, that's going to conclude this video. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below and your feelings on the situation and how things have been going. Also, if maybe you work at another dealership, let me know your thoughts and experiences that you've had there. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.